Hey, Tegora, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, there we go. Hold on real quick. Yep, just say anything.
Anything.
Yep, okay.
Yes.
One time I did one of these interviews and I had the guy so low for the recording on OBS, but it was fine in my ears because I was listening because I had a different mic setting for Discord. I had to go through and I had to find some wonky equalizer to bring my voice down and to bring his voice up. It was a mess. All right. I'm going to get a thing of water real quick and some coffee, and then we can jump into it.
Leo says,
Trisunar hehe vai still
Quality of the
serious.
background is just awful.
Oh, I just caught you. Whatever, yeah. I can.
It's
I'm
amazing
just
for
gonna
audio
share
management.
like what's going on in the basement.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a hot mess down here.
Whatever. It's yeah. Anything outside of frame is like a bomb of like chairs and pillows and books on shelves. So yeah, you're good. Yours looks good, man. I'm gonna hide about video
Blaster
participants.
I can't read
Show.
anything, Theo. Worried face.
There we go. Uh-oh, what flavor there? You got is that Ghost?
That's sour pink lemonade.
Sour
it's
pink
hard
lemonade.
to find around here.
My kid drinks
That's it.
Ghost.
Yeah, that's a rough one to find.
Sour
that
pink
I,
lemonade?
Yeah, people that I work with complain about Ghost as a product because they say that it makes them feel like their skin crawls for some
don't
reason.
listen to me says.
And I don't know if that's like
This
a
is how I
common thing
imagine
or
Tech
whatever.
Zero raw
I guess I'm
less
just
than
used to
3.
it because I drink like boatloads of caffeine.
Yeah, you'll have that. I've had energy drinks
Get your
before.
water?
I don't think it make my skin crawl, but no, let me grab it now. I'll be right back.
All right.
Chat, be nice to Tegora. That literally means nothing, by the way.
All right, chat. It's time to take over stream. Oh wait, he's coming back.
He better be nice to us.
Yeah, if you guys got any sort of questions to get started, I can see Twitch chat, so I can respond to anything that's going on here. But you guys will probably see me around.
Leo says,
The stream is your no.
The stream is mine. Nice. Let me actually pull up something here. Got some notes that I had written down.
Master Blaster says,
No questions, ATM TBH. But I think Theo bailed on you. Kappa.
translated
I kind of
from
don't want to get
Icelandic.
started with the interview portion of the thing until he's back, so I know he's got it recorded for his podcast. Theo did bail on me.
Don't listen to me says,
Are you married?
Yeah, I'm.
Master Blaster says,
Am I married? No,
It
I'm not
seems really
married.
cold where you are.
As you can tell from the basement, that looks a lot like, you know, those like 1980s computer
Like
guy basements
Canon
where there's
Cole.
just like CRT monitors hanging from the ceiling and stuff like that. That's kind of what my basement looks like. If I was to pan the camera around
Don't
to
listen
see
to
the
me
rest of the
says.
basement, you would see like
Love it.
computers off in that corner and a computer behind me and monitors everywhere. Just like strewn computer parts all over the floor and black bins of cabling and all kinds of other stuff here in the background. No, but I'm not married. I've been divorced since it's been almost 20 years. I think since I've been divorced. Like I got married super young, and then
Master Blaster
I
says.
found out that it was not for me,
Actually, 90s
or at
basement
least
really from
that
this
person
angle.
was not for me.
But I dig it.
Ajuku says.
But in those cases, there's more stuff and pizza boxes.
Don't listen to me says.
Pizza boxes.
Geez, how
No,
old are you?
I've got one pizza box.
You look like 35.
I'm generally like in the basement man cave. I'm generally clean but messy. I
Neo
look 35.
says.
Thank
Do
you.
you stream for 7H30?
I appreciate that. I'll get into my to like more biographical details once I get started with Theo. Once he grabs some
King
water and
Electro
comes back.
69
because
says.
I want to make sure that
King
he's sort
Pillow.
of recording for
Master
posterity.
Blaster says.
I think some of the
Pizza
interviews that
boxes
he's
are a good
doing
sign.
are like
Don't
a really
listen
good
to me
idea,
says.
and
Got ya.
to some extent we can start to capture some of this stuff and people who want to go back and like listen to I think it's kind of opinion work, but it's grounded in experience. So let me think here. Let's see. I can give a little bit of background and then we'll put it on repeat whenever Theo gets back. But my my role and what you'll see at the bottom of my stream biographical information is essentially that I am working as a system administrator, but an L3 system administrator and senior technical
Master
lead.
Blaster
So I
says.
do a whole bunch
Theo
of
definitely bailed on you.
work administrating like servers and systems. I'm a server owner for at least
Very reliable
2
streamer.
Linux servers where I work in a production environment. And on top of that, I have a sort of managerial leadership role where I basically
I
like
got coffee and snacks, but I'm not
manage it.
sharing.
I manage a team
says.
of service
so you
desk
can hack
technicians,
those
a bunch
servers.
of like
Nice.
entry-level
Either one just
technicians.
asking
So
says.
Hides by
that's
seeing
part of the
wild
reason
Theo.
why I think Theo wanted to get me on to interview is to talk about what it takes to get into the industry, and I'm all for having that conversation
Don't
because I
listen to me
would
says.
love to see better
We started the
interviewees.
podcast for you. Be our
Yep.
My end
guest,
of things.
Theo.
Agree. That's precisely why.
Yeah, and so I kind of put off some of the biographical information so that I knew that you had hit the record button or whatever you intend to do on your side.
I just got to make a. I'm gonna kill Zupier. If you're still over there on YouTube, if anyone says anything, let me know and I'll open it up. But to save a little bit of computing power, I'm gonna kill YouTube. That Discord
Will do.
closed. I need to do
Master
a
Blaster
marker.
Theo, I think it's more useful if you turn off TTS and just read the questions if you see them.
I know, Master Blaster. I hear ya. I think I'm going to let TTS roll. I really liked how it went last time. It was a little bit of a distraction, but I can pause it if a good question comes through, and then we can talk about it. I've been thinking about this a few times, and there's just not a medium out there that does this. A lot of podcasts are, some dusty old farts, I'm included, where they're just talking heads. They're just talking heads,
right
and
there
they're
with
okay. They're just talking heads, and they're they like hearing each other talk. I like this medium, so. But I appreciate your input.
Yeah.
Yep, good.
I've got chat pulled up here, and
Okay.
I'm gonna kind of answer some of the questions
Ajiku says.
that you
Can
put
you
off.
set TDS's volume lower?
And
Leo
simultaneously, I'll just watch
Email.
chat, and if I
It
need
can
to
be
like
can't
pause and
use
respond,
only
I'll
words
do
for
that
no.
because I feel the same way that you do about some of these
King Electro
old
69
farts and
says.
podcasts. Like it's not as
Talking
interactive
heads
as
with a
it probably
240p
should be,
camera.
Yeah,
given what we're trying to do.
agree. Okay, then we could start anywhere. Let me grab your the questions I gave you. I put in. They should be the same for. Hold on, I'm getting my brain right. This should be good for what I put in my notes too. They should be the same. Yep. Okay, I don't need that.
All right, first question: time zone. Yes.
Yes, you are in a time zone. We talked about voice TTS, and so I know this is a little bit behind the scenes or whatever, but I did Zoog's interview in Minecraft, which was pretty funny. We just decided to go to the video way this time, and we're using Discord to do that.
Yeah, if I could make an avatar on short
You
notice,
want
I
to
would have,
ask
but I had
us?
a million other things
Turn
going
off
on.
8-bit Theo.
Yep. No, you are good. Don't even worry. There we go. Okay. So who you are, your background, as much or as little as you're comfortable with, location, age, previous jobs. Thank you for all the information you provided in the Discord. You can go over as much or little of it as you want to, Tegora.
Okay. Yeah, so
Leo
had a few
says.
questions while we're waiting on you to get
Use
water.
the MS
So
Teams
I'm
avatar
not
XD.
35. I'm
So SSN.
41 years old.
Translated from
Turning
German.
42 this year, getting up there. I started in IT when I was like super young. I was 13 years old, I think, when dial-up internet first became a thing, and we had a computer that was like for the family, and I basically co-opted it as my own. Back then, we were getting into things like Command and Conquer Red Alert and Westwood Chat and things like that. The early days of the internet where basically the only important information about you that you would post in any chat that you would go to is age, sex, and location.
Yep.
That's the first question that everybody popped off with on the internet. ASL.
So what did you have for that chat? Like, so a lot of people started with IRC. Some people with web. Some people. What did you?
MIRC was a big one, and Westwood Chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I had a couple of opportunities as I was graduating high school. I was super poor growing up. I still feel that way in some regards, and I identify sort of as a poor person, but have gotten more sort of like comfortable later in life.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that, but
Yeah.
I had some opportunities to go to college right out, but those opportunities basically involved me going into debt, and I knew nothing about debt at that point. Like student loans or loans generally were just completely foreign to me. And so as a member of a family of 5, I had expected some help going to college. My parents had basically said, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. But as poor people, we never talked about money.
Yeah.
And then it came time to go to college, and we started having conversations about money, and they were asking me how I was going to pay for it. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean.
That's an excellent question. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you mean. Different times, right?
Yeah.
So basically I started off my IT career going up to the MEP station, the Military Entrance Processing Station, taking a really long test and joining the U.S. Army as an enlisted person. I asked for a job working with computers, and they gave me a job working on computer networks. The available jobs working on computers has expanded dramatically since like 2000, 2001 when I enlisted. but I basically joined as a computer networking technician, and that's where I got my start. I worked for 8 years in the U.S. Army. I joined the Army for the GI Bill,
Okay.
because I couldn't afford college, um, and
And
since
that
then it's
bankroll and that helped fund your college education. Was you decided to go the military route and you would offer your service and they would provide money for university.
yeah, and that has expanded dramatically since I joined. So the GI Bill was like $23,400 when I first joined,
Yeah.
which by the time I got out, it would cover like 1 year of school.
That's
Uh,
wild.
and then they had expanded it to this post 9/11 GI Bill, which just pays for everything: tuition, fees, books, housing, the whole shebang.
Wow.
And so I got 4 years of fully funded education out of that.
And what
I need to get bigger.
and what did that yeah. And what did that cover for you for your under? Did that was that 1 degree? Was that one of your under or whatever they call it, undergraduate or?
So I did a whole bunch of tuition assistance while I was in the military. I was taking undergraduate courses while I was in. Had finished basically 3/4 of a bachelor's degree by the time I was in. So when I got out and I went to study at Arizona State University in Tempe. When I got out, I started studying biology. At the time, I was interested in biology and medicine, and I had found some interesting niche intersections with like telemedicine at the point that I was like getting out of the military and basically getting into college. But the GI Bill paid for all of my bachelor's degree and the first master's degree.
Okay.
I'll get into this whole like degree situation later.
Okay.
I've got my own opinions about how that should work. But I have a ton of experience in networking. I won't let this pass by unsaid. I spent about a good portion of my time as a paratrooper. I was deployed overseas to Afghanistan. I spent time in South Korea, and then I finished up working for the secure switchboard at the White House Communications Agency for the last 4 years, where I served for 2 presidential administrations:
Zeus
the
says.
George Bush
Accidentally
administration
just
and
joined that
Barack
call loops.
Obama's administration.
That's amazing. Off the rip, before it gets by me, thank you, Tegora, for your service.
Yeah, you can buy me a beer.
Yes, yeah. Tegora,
That's how
yeah.
it usually goes. Thank you for your service. Can I buy you a beer?
Yep, you got me. I owe you one, so.
Yeah, so at the intersection of health and medicine, that's sort of where I went with for my undergrad degree. I spent a lot of time trying to settle in and figure out what I wanted to do for the degree plan. I thought at the time that like I needed to study biology in order to be pre-med, and so I kept studying biology for a while, and then I settled on a degree called Biology and Society, which is this intersection between like history, biomedical ethics, and biology
I was talking
at the
the
time
other
when
day
I
that
was
when is
studying
available,
there.
we
And
are
so
talking-
I did that. I did a degree on the history and philosophy of biology, and specifically the history of autism, when I was studying for my master's degree there at Arizona State University. Went on to get a second master's degree, a master's of arts in history and philosophy of science from the University of Toronto. And then came back to the States and spent a lot of time studying for my PhD, at which point like 2017 kind of hit.
Okay.
And there was a lot of stuff politically in the world that was going on that made me sort of like have a crisis of faith in what I was up to. And that caused me to exit the sort of academic world that I was siloed in at the time and enter into a new sort of career field for me. It was at this like intersection of teaching or education and information technology, which I was quite good at. No matter how how much time and effort I had spent away from technology. I had kept getting drawn back in by it in numerous ways. And talk about that extensively, but
Okay.
I had always been sort of drawn back into IT, no matter how my life and career had pivoted in different directions. So I continued working in the PhD program and my PhD dissertation for a while. I was all but dissertation, so I was basically writing a book at the time that I had exited, and I continued working on that for like 1 year while I was an IT instructor, a career tech instructor here in Southwest Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2018, late 2018 is basically when I exited that PhD program. And I basically just focused full time on teaching and how to become a good educator at that point. And I had worked on, I was taking courses towards a master's degree at the point that I had exited. So I was working on a master's in education at that point. Got pretty good at that. I still teach on the side as an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati. Continue to teach young people
Go
topics
Bearcats.
like system administration. Yeah, this is your alma mater, isn't it?
It is, but for my master's, that's where I got my master's from. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're adjunct teaching there, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm adjuncting here in the spring. So I started the second week of January, teaching sysadmin again.
Cool.
So yeah, while I was teaching, I taught through COVID-19. The year after like COVID-19 started to settle and we got back into things again, like, you know, the world was starting to settle. So late in October in 2022, basically like I was reached out to by recruiter via LinkedIn, and the recruiter had basically said, hey, are you interested in interviewing for this role that we have? And they had like 2 different roles that they were interested in interviewing me for. So I interviewed for 2 different roles. One was a senior systems engineer deploy, and then the other one was like a system administrator level 2. So interviewed for the first position, the senior sysadmin position, and they basically said, you're not really what we're looking for. I interviewed for the L2 sysadmin, and they're like, all right, we'll hire you there. Essentially, I guess I didn't interview well. I might interview well. I might interview better nowadays,
right.
after I've like spent a lot of time interviewing other candidates and I realize what interviewers are looking for.
Okay.
And so I ended up getting hired on as an L2 system administration. I went through several months just kind of like sitting around waiting. I was in this like period of time where I'm waiting on a security clearance, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on around me. I had spent 2.5 months basically just sitting in a chair, like doing nothing but studying. Like I got 3 certifications before I hit the chair in the office where I worked.
Jeez.
So once I could actually get to the point where I could start training for the job, they're like, okay, so you're just getting a bunch of certifications. All right, that's nice.
And that's good. They give you that kind of flexibility to get that education. Well, that does to go after the certification. So seems like a good place.
It was a sort of management concern for me. Like I guess after I had started in my management role, that was one of the places where I was like looking to make an effect.
Okay.
There were several people who would come work for our company, and until they got their initial interim security clearance, they couldn't do anything. And it's not true that you can't do anything, because I make people do things now. I figured out like what they could possibly do within the environment, and I just put them to work.
Okay, right.
Because there's nothing worse than like starting at your new job and being told you can't really do your job until you get your interim security clearance. So you're just gonna sit here.
That's interesting. How come? Well, that's a good question. How come? I mean, what do you think the problem was? How come they didn't realize that they could still be having people do things within the organization without having these clearances? What do you think the hiccup was for them?
I think it's one of those things where when people are managing teams, especially if people are like a little bit younger and can't think outside of the box or can't think creatively about what their job is, they leave a lot unquestioned, right?
Okay.
So if you've got a bunch of laborers like sitting there and they're just starting their job, there's nothing worse than starting a new job and like having no purpose in life.
Mhm.
Like feeling like you don't have a role there, or like you're not contributing and have no value. The last thing that you want to do is like lose that advantage that you get as an employer when somebody starts on and they're excited about their new role.
Yeah.
Like that's advantageous to you, and we continually lost that in every employee that started with us because they would sit around for at minimum a week. You know, sometimes young people take a week to get their security clearance, and then up to 3 months.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. And thank you for that
Here's a
perspective
question
on it too, because it's a good, it gives people the understanding of that when they get into a new organization that there's going to be things like that happen. So thank you for that perspective. So Master Blaster said, did you meet any famous hackers / industry leaders from the hacking world?
I don't think so, no. Like most of my experience has been split between academia and different sectors of academia, mostly like history and philosophy of science worlds. And in the military, I spent a good amount of time like on the networking side of things. So if I was going to interact with anybody who is like remotely famous, it would have been somebody on that side of things, the sort of computer networking or like voice over IP telephony side of things.
That makes sense.
It was only very recently in the last, probably since 2018, that I even sort of like looked at hacking as the kind of interesting and cool space that it is, like a way that you can learn really deeply about how computers work and how to break them. And I think I find a lot of value in that, not just in cybersecurity, but like in doing systems work generally. Like if you understand how the full TCP/IP stack works, that's really good for you as a sysadmin. And I value junior sysadmins a lot, like very greatly, when they have those sorts of skills. And so when you're doing Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, understanding how computers communicate, how two computers communicate across a network is extremely important for not just like how do I get into this system, but also like how do I make sure that two systems can talk together on the sysadmin side of things.
Very cool. That's encouraging to hear from me, because I'll often say that if you know how they work, if you know how the computer, if you know how it's built, if you know how the protocols communicate, then you know where the weak points are to look to exploit them. So yeah, that's encouraging to hear. Thank you. For me, that was all about me.
But yeah, so the last part of the bio that I'll just sort of put off here is, after I'd started the job and spent a good amount of time working as a L2 sysadmin, essentially they had 3 level roles within sysadmin: L1, L2, and L3. The L1s had a definite role. They reset passwords, they interact with users, they go desk side and do support. They are the first line of defense. They handle the service desk tasks. L3s are server owners, and they handle like huge problems within the environment, the stuff that's really difficult to solve. L2s are no man's land. You essentially have L1s that will escalate tasks directly, and this was a problem when I started too, but they would escalate tasks directly to the L3s because they were the problem solvers. And the L2, like no man's land, there's a big swath of guys that were hired on all at the same time to be L2 system administrators, and we all found ourselves doing the same sort of tasks, like do the audit work or find stuff to do.
Okay.
And so for four months straight, essentially every Tuesday during a week, our information assurance group would pass down what they called the audit, right? And there were a set of tasks to complete. There were like 5 different pages of this audit. Sometimes there were thousands of lines of things that we'd have to like go and check up on, like computers that weren't connected, vulnerabilities that needed addressed, you name it, right? But the first week that I did it, I was just trying to get a sense for like how it worked. How does this audit work? What are they looking for and why? By the second week, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is kind of humdrum. How can I script this? By the third week of that month, I had boiled down the entire audit that was thousands of lines long into a scripted form, and I would run the script as soon as the thing hit on Tuesday, and within like 5 to 15 minutes of starting the thing, I'd be finished, right? And all of a sudden, I found myself with a week's worth of time to kill doing God knows what, right? And so you can look at this 2 ways. I'm gonna like do the audit and just sit around for 4.5 days and do nothing, or I can do the audit and try to find other places that I can learn about how the environment works and how I can make a difference in it. And this is the critical point that I need to get across as a sort of manager of people. Like, you need to find ways to prove your value in order to advance. And this is where I was like super timely about this. I noticed that in the environment we were doing a couple of different upgrades of major systems at about the point that I had started, and I was also really good at like scripting tasks that needed to be done. If I had figured out that one thing needed to get accomplished regularly within the environment, I would ask, all right, so how do I do this thing 700 times?
Yep.
Right? So scripting is incredibly important, because like if you find yourself doing software installs, great, but like what if 700 software install tickets come in all at the same time? Can you handle that, right? And presumably we can handle it if we just have to script it. And so I got really good at batch, bash, PowerShell, and Perl kind of all at the same time when I was working. And this became super important once we did a sort of major system upgrade, because everybody had lost access to some software that they didn't have, environmental variables that weren't set correctly, you name it. I developed a sort of a suite of generalized scripts that I would use to solve major problems whenever we did our upgrade. And this took me from like a position where I was an L2 system administrator, like just starting, to this guy knows his shit. He knows how to solve problems no matter what the problems are. He needs to be an L3 system administrator, and also he knows how to think about things in advance. We need to put him in charge of our service desk so he can get ahead of problems. So like both of those things happened sort of simultaneously around March this year. And I've fit the bill as far as that's concerned. Like, you know, I'll typically like get ahead of my managers ask about what sort of things that they're looking for. So like I never want to put my manager in a place where they're asking me to do something that I wasn't aware of myself, and that I'm not already on top of.
Okay.
That's an important thing. Like once you advance beyond entry level and get to the point where, you know, you're starting to take on roles and responsibilities for yourself, to the extent that something lies in your lane that you're responsible for and you're supposed to be in charge of, you never want to be in the position where your boss comes down and blindsides you with something that you're supposed to be responsible for.
Okay.
And so I've always been like the kind of guy that, like, by the time my boss asks me to do something, I'm way ahead of him. I'm like weeks ahead of whatever the ask is.
Whatever he was, yeah.
And I think that's par for the course for what it means to be an effective leader. Just always anticipate the ask for what your boss is looking for.
Okay, I have a couple follow up there when you're talking about that, because so you answered the one, scripting language, Perl, Bash. Was there another one? Was there a third one in there?
So Perl, Bash, Batch.
Batch.
He's professionally proactive.
Batch.
What is your
Anybody who's worked at Windows command line knows Batch.
Okay.
So the .bat file or batch files.
Okay.
And PowerShell.
PowerShell.
PowerShell is incredibly important.
And
You
powerful.
work in a
I mean, it is.
Yeah, if you work in a Windows Active Directory environment,
Mhm.
PowerShell is very, very important. It's
Okay.
how it's how I can, as a sysadmin, basically like get into other people's computers as they're using them, do a whole bunch of work on their computer, and get things done without them ever realizing I was there.
Wow.
And it also makes it so I have to take fewer steps in the day. Like, our building is pretty big, and I'm very lazy.
So essentially you're feeding your laziness by not leaving your desk to do shit on other people's computers.
The smartest sysadmins you never see walking around or like wearing Heelys rolling across the building. No, you see them, you don't even see them. You don't know that they're there. They're
Mhm.
like, hey, I just installed this software for you. And it's like, how?
It's done,
How
bro.
did you do
Moving on. Questions is slowing me down.
Well, this is very cool.
Faux Machina. Oh, Faux
Hey,
Machina
what's up,
says,
Faux
yeah, you're professionally proactive? What a jerk.
You're making us all look bad because we all just sitting here doing exactly what we're told and nothing more.
Right. The other question I had was, and I've struggled with this. Like, okay, so you're saying, hey, you get a task, get it done, but
Yeah,
the
do
next
it one
step,
time.
but the next step is that you're like, okay, well, I've done these. A lot of this stuff can be automated. You find a way to make it quicker, a way to make it faster. You get it done in record time, and then you're looking for other things that you can work on, but not just looking for them. Look for it, identify it, and already start working on it in that free time that you've freed up for yourself. Do you worry about being noticed for that extra work? Do you toot your own horn, or are you the person that just keeps your head down and just says, hey, it'll get noticed? Because the reason why I'm asking that is because that's what I do. I don't know if that's always been the best thing for me.
Yeah.
So what are your
Sort of
thoughts
like
on that?
self-promotion aspect of like making sure people recognize your value.
Yeah.
Uh,
What are your thoughts on that, I guess? Yeah.
I would try to play that in the middle. You don't want to make it so that your bosses don't notice your value,
Right.
and it's probably a little bit different in the remote workspace than the in-person role that I serve in,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a little hard for people not to see what I do.
Right.
Because they're in the meetings with me and they see me asking critical questions. They see me doing the role and doing the jobs that I've been assigned very well and getting ahead of problems. Whereas if you're in a remote role, it's very hard for people to see your value and your effect unless you put it in their face. So I
Okay.
don't know that there's a one size fits all answer to this,
Okay.
but I will say that like in the in-person setting that I work in, I constantly encourage the people that work for me at the entry level and the sort of mid-level to, every time you do something that is important, that you feel added significant value and sort of lies outside of your regular role, write it down as a bullet point to put on your resume.
Okay.
So keep track of it. At the very least, keep track of it. And there will be set points. We have one-on-ones with our employees once a month. And every time we have one-on-ones, we have a forum for them to talk about what they've done professionally. Like, tell me about something that you've done in the last month that has added value to the team that you work on.
Okay. Very cool. That's cool. And you even talked about how, you are looking at those things to keep, that you're getting done because you freed up time, and that you're trying to stay ahead of what your managers may be trying to accomplish. You almost kind of accomplish the tooting your own horn because your boss is saying, okay, we got to work on XYZ. And you can at that time chime in and say, actually have been working. I saw that too, and I've been working on this, or I've been working on that. Continue to increment that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a gaping hole here that you guys haven't been paying attention to, and now that you've asked me about it, I'm already 3 weeks into working on the solution that you guys need.
Right.
That kind of thing happens all the time, where somebody will be like, "Hey, so I noticed that we don't have a disaster recovery plan." And it's like, yeah, I've been working on that for the last 3 weeks with like 3 other members of 3 different teams. We'll have that rolled out to you in about a week or two.
Okay.
Like that kind of stuff. And so essentially, like in the in-person environment, you let the work speak for itself, whereas you don't really have to like throw it in somebody's face that you did something. There have been instances where I'll definitely like make it known. So there was an instance where I went back to a siloed space that I don't have access to, and there were like 3 different senior engineers who were working on this one problem that was super visible, and they were working on it for 3 weeks straight. Couldn't figure out like what the problem was with this one critical application within the siloed space. And they're like, we need a fresh set of eyes. So they, signed me in, brought me back there. They're like, you can't touch the keyboard, but you can have a look. And so I'm sitting there looking at what they're up to, and I have them run a whole bunch of basic tests. They're running a command line script that launches an executable, and in the command line script it has if-then conditionals. And this is where like knowing the logic of code is extremely helpful, no matter what. I'm parroting what Zoog said last
I was just about to say, right.
No matter what role you fill in IT, knowing the logic of code will serve you well.
Now
I
that's,
looked at this code.
Real quick, that's an important. I just wanted to say, you don't have to understand every part of it, of the code, nuances, but the logic of the code. Like there's loops, there's declarations, there's methods, and by looking at that, you have an understanding of what it does. Is that close to what you're saying?
Another way to put it is, if you understand the logic of code, you don't have to understand the language.
Okay.
Because all languages, interpreted, compiled, you name it, have the same logic. They all have if-then conditionals. They all have for loops. They all have while loops. It's going to look slightly different, the syntax. But if you can look at some code that's already written and you can say, there's an if conditional here, and this is essentially what led to one of the solves that I did in, I think it was in 15 minutes, that took them 3.5 weeks to look at. So there was an if-then conditional that would launch, and it would say, if this thing is here, if this executable exists in this location, then launch it. If it doesn't exist in this location, then send this error. So what was happening at the command line when they would launch that script? It was sending them the error that basically said it doesn't exist in this location. So, they would go and open up the Windows File Explorer and show me the UNC path where the executable existed, and I'm like, so I see it's there. And so what I did is I ran a PowerShell command, and so the PowerShell command that I ran was essentially a command to see if a file exists. It was a test path command, I think.
Okay.
And so I ran a test path command on the exact location.
Master Blaster says.
First the location, right? And I ran a second test path command on the exact file name. And so when I ran a test path command on the exact file name, what happened was it said that file name didn't exist. So what did I do? I cd'd into that UNC path, and I type in ls command. This is all command line work, so it's important to know how to work in the command line, folks. I type in ls command, and what do I see? I see the same executable file listed in the same directory. Can anybody guess what the problem is?
The same executable listed in the same directory.
So I've given you all the details that you need to solve the problem.
That's what. Oh, I didn't know there was a quiz. I would have been taking notes,
so
Tegora.
I'll give you the details. Give you the details
All right,
again.
fair enough. Pay attention, chat.
So there's an if conditional. The first part of the if conditional says if the file exists here, launch it. The second part says if it doesn't exist here, throw an error. When they launched the script, the error was going. So essentially, I
Don't
got the
listen to me,
indication
sis.
that it didn't exist in this
The user
location.
that executed
They
the
pulled
script
up
had
Windows
no
File
read writes.
Explorer and they look at the file name .exe and they say, see, it's there. Okay, so what I do the test connection or test path on the directory and then the executable, and the first test path for the directory is correct. The second test path for the executable says that the executable isn't there. When I type ls in the directory, what do you think I find?
The file's there.
Leo
Or no,
says,
.exe was missing on the code.
So
there's a permission
user
issue.
had no reads right, so it's possible there could be a permissions issue.
Okay.
The exe was missing on the code. Closely
Phone
on.
Machina says,
Misspelling.
Misspelling.
Oh,
So-
the file was misspelled. Oh yeah, no. Go ahead.
So some genius sysadmin, before they had moved a file, had put .exe on the file, thinking that the .exe was missing. But they had simply added a .exe to the file name. So the file's name, when I ls'd in that
Oh, no.
directory,
You'd
was,
see it.
let's say it's the executable was Bob. Bob.exe.exe.
LOL.
Leo says,
So you would see it because you LS'd into
translated
it,
from Tegora.
but it wouldn't run because it was .exe.exe. It was the wrong, or it wasn't
It took
triggering.
It took 3 senior engineers,
Phone
3
Machina
weeks.
says,
Classic.
you the one just asking says,
Capital.
And it
translated
took me
from
15
Swedish.
minutes to
Phone Machina
solve this
says,
problem.
I've done it
And
a
this
few
is
times
this
with
is to the point.
CSV.csv.
Know the
King
logic
Electro
of
69
of
says,
programming,
Did you try turning
because
it
it's
on
going to
and
help
again
you
next
problem solve in
Insect
these kind of
says,
ways. And B, work at
translated
the
from
command
Dutch.
line.
Leo says,
Like work at the command line,
What kind of
because the
sysadmin
GUI
doesn't enable
is not
so
always going to
extensions
give you
on
the
File
answer.
Explorer?
No.
Learn how to
Phone Machina says,
enact some
Carrot
to
now.
enact some
Translated
troubleshooting
from
tools
Haitian
at the command
Creole.
line, because like command line is just miles and miles more powerful than GUI. There's a right tool for the job kind of situation when
Agree.
it comes to the GUI. Like, let me be honest, like sometimes I'll use the GUI to move files because it's easier. Okay, fine. But in the vast majority of like I don't know how to solve these problems cases, I'm gonna default to the command line.
Yeah. That should be a joke. How many senior sysadmins does it take to find a file or whatever?
Well, this was also the first thing that I told them. It's like, if you want to make sure that this problem doesn't happen in the future, there's this button that you want to click right here in your Windows File Explorer. And I pulled down the ribbon for him, and I'm like, if you just click this button that says Show File Extensions, it'll make it so that the file extensions are visible, and you'll be able to see that .exe in the future. And I said, like, for all of these small siloed networks that you have, like, you might want to push a group policy that changes a registry key that makes it so that all systems on that network have this checkbox already clicked, so that, you know, no matter what computer you go on, you're always going to pull up a file explorer and see the file extension. For what it's worth, this question that Leon asked, what kind of sysadmin doesn't enable show file extensions in File Explorer? You don't. There are many different Windows computers that you're going to come across, right? And like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Like,
so many
I've
settings
been
in
in
there. Like, that's a
situations-
checkbox even. Good.
Yeah, I've been in so many situations where I've felt like a dumbass for missing something really basic in a sysadmin role. So the last thing that I did as like part of going back there and helping these guys out is like I tried to like internalize what I was thinking and feeling at the time that I basically like solved this problem that they've been working on for a good amount of time, and I didn't throw it back in their face, right? But I did go back to my boss and like pulled him aside and was like, yeah, so next time we have conversations about the value that I bring to this company, and I want you to remember what these guys are about to tell you.
Just you prefaced it, so when it hit, it hit differently. Very good. Hey, pause. That was nice of you. You didn't have to do that gift stuff. Thank you very much. I want to real quick take a look. Master Blaster, we were talking about tooting your own horn. I've been that guy. There wasn't much reward in that for me. I switched teams. There were people way ahead of me doing whole proactive working. However, the rewards were measly salary hikes after a year. So also irrelevant rewards. The only rewards are understanding what you do, learning the insides and out, then leveraging that to land a much better paying job that also fits you personally better. Those are your 2 cents.
That last part is the key.
Yep.
That last part is the key. It's like you don't do
Leo
it for the
says,
company to pay you more.
XDD.
You do it so
Translated
that
from
you can pad
Spanish.
your CV
Phone
or your
Machinus
resume
is,
so that you can get the next
Facts.
job that's going to
You
pay
got
you
to
more.
be
Yeah.
careful.
It just so
Don't-
happens
don't
that
I've
it,
done
expect-
something
yeah.
very similar.
it just so happens that
CSV, but I would have thought
it
they
helps
had seen they were
promote
looking at
both.
File Explorer because I've done it before, but shit happens.
The what you're doing helps the company and helps you, but yeah, it really it helps you because it's something you put on your resume. Pause has had a question in there too.
I
So
want 64-bit Theo back.
I still 64-bit Theo is there, Robbie. I have a pause has a question. So I have a question. As someone trying to transition into IT in their mid 30s, I'm currently working on my Network Plus and was planning on getting Security Plus next. Is there right thinking to get my foot hopefully in the door somewhere? And I'm glad this was asked because I had it on my list of questions anyways. We were going to get into how do you get into how do you land a job in cybersecurity or even IT. So what do you think, Tegora?
Let's see. I think I have something written down here. Career advice to get started.
Mhm.
I think you had, what is it, the test taking?
I said I can't get to it because I'm on the
timeline.
Discord there. What did you level? Have you taught yourself? How important are certs? How you did land your job in cybersecurity? You get in the industry, stepping out of your comfort zone. Oh, did you find it?
No, but I'll answer it off the cuff.
Okay.
So I get this question a lot from young people that we've already hired in to work for us. So first of all, if you need certs to get your foot in the door, definitely get the certs that you think that you need to get your foot in the door. Certs are critically important so that you can get your foot in the door.
Mhm.
But once your foot's in the door, um, I don't really care that much. Like you'll notice that most IT professionals, at least on the sysadmin side, they care what you can do. They don't care what you're certified for.
Don't
Because
listen to me
often what
says.
is
I just
proven to
did
be
it
the case
with 30
is
from being a chef into it.
what you can do is a lot less than what you're certified for. So there's a lot of people who hold a lot of certifications
Leo
and they
says.
can't do a whole lot.
Omelapsare for sysadmin roles.
And there are a lot of people who hold few certifications and they can do a whole
You
lot.
on Just Asking says.
I guess I
Home
need
labs.
to get an appointment
Yes,
from optician
Leon.
Yeah.
because I see 8-bit
Home
Theo.
labs.
Losing
So
face.
if you wanna prove anything that your
Don't listen to me says.
employer or your team or
7
somebody is
years
going
in
to
by
value, like
Still
prove
Still growing.
experience.
Still the best thing I've ever did.
So there's 3 ways of looking at this. You're certified to do something, which means you have the knowledge, right? There's the capability angle of things where you have
Leo
the
says.
know-how. So
Deploy
there's the know
web
that,
servers,
the know-how,
applications,
and then the
etc.
I have actually done this thing in the world, and I know the ins and outs of it and how it can break and how to fix it, that is the know-how and know that combined. This is your capacity to affect change, your capacity to have value, and this is the critically important thing within uh, the systems side of IT, especially. It might be also true of cybersecurity, but on the system side of things, you want to have the capacity to show value and affect change within a production environment.
Huge
Yeah,
advice there. Thank you. Yep.
and it helps with figuring out, like, people always have these questions about like what certification to get. It helps figuring out the answer to that for you, because like you you kind of have a sense after a certain point like what kind of niche you want to fall into. And so if you're having trouble getting into that niche, get the cert that's going to allow you to get into that niche,
Mhm.
and then flaunt it to whoever's going to hire you. And then once you've got your foot in the door, like you got to prove that you have the capacity to do the things that they want you to do.
Mhm.
And that's where like having the home lab experience, try hack me, hack the box, things like that are super important.
The certificate almost answers the question before it's asked, because a lot of people say, well, how do I prove I can get into industry? And a lot of people in HR or hiring, or some hiring managers, they put a lot of stock in that certificate because, okay, this person at least at a bare minimum has the vocabulary that we can talk and we can develop them. Or they put a lot more stock into it and say, well, that person, they took the certificate and they have the certificate, they obviously know how to work in this role. So it's almost answering the question is like, well, what do I have to do? You're giving, through that certificate, you're getting the foundational knowledge of that certificate to be considered appropriate for that industry. And I agree with Tegora saying that you can somewhat accomplish the same thing by working on home labs, by doing write-ups on Try Hack Me, by putting it on your GitHub, putting it on a website, putting it on a Git book, showcasing that and including it on your resume too, so they can go through it and they can look at it also.
This leads to like one of the critical things that we wanted to talk about during this interview, and that is the interview itself. So knowing upfront what an interviewer is looking for, what HR managers are looking for is one side of things. It's like, the HR plus recruiters is the sort of screening side of things to make sure that like the managers who are actually doing the technical interviews, that their time isn't being wasted by a candidate who falls far below expectations. Once you've hit the interview room, there's a different set of expectations and a certain set of things that the interviewers are looking for. Um, and this all boils down to uh, my everybody's afraid concept, right? And so if you realize that everybody's afraid of something, and that your interviewers are afraid of some things in particular, what your interviewers are afraid of are the following things. One, I'm hiring somebody that I can't train. Two, I'm hiring somebody that won't work well with others. Three,
I'm just not saying anything. I see. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm not saying anything because this is excellent shit. Yep.
the third one is the sort of unknown portion. The third one is I'm hiring somebody that I don't know what they're like, and I'm going to regret later uh hiring this person. And that's the sort of unknown portion. So essentially you're answering two questions in the interview process. The first question is about fit. Do you fit well on the team? And the second question is sort of about like learning an OJT. Are you the type of person that can possibly learn new things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that that you have to know everything.
Mhm.
So when I'm doing technical interview questions in light of what I just told you, the technical interview questions are not to gauge whether or not we're going to hire you. They're this is advice for the entry level only, just so I'm being clear. So like once you go beyond the entry level,
Mhm.
it's a whole new bag of things, right? But for entry level specifically, I'm not trying to answer via technical questions whether or not I'm going to hire you. I'm trying to answer by asking technical questions, where do I have to start with this person?
Mhm.
How much work am I going to have to put in to train this person up on the job? Is this person capable of being trained on the job?
Mhm.
And that's a critical pivot to make, because a lot of people, while asking and answering technical interview questions during an interview, they'll immediately, when they can't come to an answer for a particular technical question, they'll say something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm doing horrible. I can't answer any of these questions." It's like, no, this is giving us valuable information as your future employer about how much work that we're going to have to do.
Mhm.
Yes, when we do the comparison, so if we have 5 people interviewing for the same position, and essentially we have to compare across all 5 of them for one position to hire, we're going to pick the person who has less OJT. So at the end of the day, yes, we are using this to gauge whether or not we're going to hire you, but like it's not disqualifying. Like the technical interview questions are not disqualifying in and of themselves, because we also want to know, do you work well with others? Do you fit on a team? That other guy who can answer all the technical interview questions, maybe he's just a garbage person. Maybe he
Yeah.
came off as an asshole during the interview. Like there are people that I've interviewed, and I'm like, he couldn't answer like so we got through with
Phone
a
máquina
technical interview
says.
one time, and we're like, hold
Such
on, I
good
got a
advice
question
on
of
the
this
interview.
person. So
It's true
I
even if it's
asked
not
one more question
cybersecurity
that
or
was a
sysadmin.
follow-up, and
Perfect
I was
description
like,
of a technical
I muted
interview.
the microphone because we do all of our things remotely. I'm like, I need to know some things first. So I muted the microphone, and I said, I'm gonna ask some sort of like fit questions to figure out where this guy's at. So I unmuted the microphone, came back to the guy, and I'm like, all right, so tell me about a time when you failed. And sometimes these like really basic questions, about tell me a time when you failed, tell me about a time that you succeeded at something, tell me about you know your your favorite vacation. There are some questions that are geared towards figuring out what kind of person that you are, that you should also have like not rehearsed answers to, but like an understanding of how you're going to answer the questions.
Mhm.
So a horrible answer to the question I've never, or tell me about a time that you failed, is I've never
Never
failed.
failed. Never happened. Mm-mm.
Yeah, never, not in my life. Failure's one of those. Right.
It's hilarious. Yes.
Failure's one of those. But like what we're looking for is, how do you take that thing that you feel like you didn't do as well as you could,
I've
and you
seen
turn
plenty of
that
failures
into a
from others.
positive, right? It's about the pivot. Because you have to answer the question, yes, I failed. Obviously, we all fail. We're all human. And they want to have that sort of recognition during the interviews. Like, everybody's human. We're all going to fail at some point. So let's recognize that I've done that, and here's how. And also, I kind of laugh about it now, because when I talk about this failure, it turned into
Leo
like one of
says.
my greatest successes
never fail.
because XYZ, right? It's about turning that thing that you once looked at as a failure, and like using it as a way to massively improve yourself, or the team that you work on, or the company that you work for. It's about that pivot. We want to know that you failed, and that you have the humility, and that you recognize the humanity in failure.
Mhm.
But we also want to know that when you fail, you don't sit down and cross your arms and not tell anybody about the fact that you failed. You try to hide it, sweep it under the rug.
What did you learn? What did you get from it? How did you improve? Yeah, from that failure. It's hilarious.
One of the first things that sysadmins learn on the job, and you have to learn it on the job, but an L1 sysadmin will always learn on the job at some point, maybe sooner, maybe later, that if you break something, own up to it immediately.
Yeah, right on. That's one of the things
it's not
that
fine. Yeah. It's technically not fine that you broke something, but it's better that you broke something and said something than to break something and not say something at all. Because we're gonna find out.
Yep.
And if it takes us 1 minute, 2 minutes to find out, we can deal with that. If it takes us like 4 or 5 hours of like whole teams working to find out what you fucked up.
Yeah.
Just to have the humility
to say something.
To say something when you've done something. Look, we all screw up. I screwed up one time. Like it was just before a weekend. I was moving a bunch of files for a user from like one system and one network share to another, and I used a command that I had not used before because I was looking for a way to put a progress bar onto a move command, right? So I used a command called rsync. And rsync is a sort of backup copy command in Linux. It's really cool and interesting command, but it had some features that I wasn't aware of, because when you look at the man page of copy versus rsync, you'll see that rsync is effectively copy, but with a couple of other features. Okay. One of the features that I didn't know about was essentially rsync when you supply it with some options, and I don't know exactly, I didn't go back and do the post-mortem on this, but when you give it some options, essentially it'll change the ownership of parent folders above it. And I had done this on a network share that made it so that this user who I had transferred his files of was the owner of an entire network share throughout the entire weekend. So I basically brought a huge swath of the production environment down for 3 days of workable time. Mm-hmm. Because I'd used a command that I wasn't aware of before. Mm-hmm. And I was, I came on a Monday, I looked at it, I saw, oh, that's the problem. I saw a whole bunch of P1 tickets come in. I was the owner of the server at the time. I was like, oh, I did that. I know is the source of the problem. So I immediately reach out to the guy who was senior to me at the time, and I had said hey, I did this. I wanted to let you know there's tickets that came in about it. I feel awful, but I've already fixed it. We're good now. Mm-hmm. And so he took it to the meetings above me, and everybody was happy that it was solved. It was resolved quickly, and they were like, just don't do it again. I'm like, yeah, I probably won't. Not that anyway.
Right. Yep. Agree. Yep. I agree. Owning up to the mistake and working on it is often way better than pretending it wasn't you and pretending like it didn't happen. I agree with you 110% there. MSEC, before I forget, that's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you, which we got to schedule time, because I don't fully understand neurodiverse conditions. So before I forget, I wanted to mention that.
That's an interesting point that you raise. A lot of open-ended questions are discriminatory to applicants with neurodiverse conditions. Yeah, so when we interview for candidates, and I don't know whether this answer is gonna hit right or whatever with regard to that statement in particular, but when we interview candidates, we have to interview candidates in the same way according to our HR department and legal and so on and so forth. We have to offer the same interview candidates to everybody who comes through the door no matter who they are. So it just so turns out that neurodiverse candidates are going to get some questions that they're not going to be able to answer well.
Theo, it's time for me to go, so I will try to join
the best thing that you can say for a neurodiverse candidate, somebody who's on the autism spectrum, for example, going into an interview is to be as like
Leo
transparent
says-
as possible.
The thing with neurodiverse people
Let people
is
know
that
up
there's
front
not one
that
single
like if
right
you notice
answer.
some things about my personality, like I don't respond well to social cues, I don't understand what those mean. I might not be able to answer some questions about some open-ended questions that you would use to gauge personality or things like that. Like you can be upfront about that stuff because
King
the first
Electro
question that
69 says,
basically any
If
interview
I'm
starts
trying to
out
enter an
with
entry
is
level
tell me a bit
position,
about
what are some
yourself.
things I can do to diversify myself from the rest?
Yeah, there's always that
So-
first question in the interview. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Isaac
Um,
says,
And that's why
In UK, interviewees can request reasonable adjustments like having the questions up front so they can have more time to work on an answer. They may be given
Yeah,
more
I don't know
time
that
during
there's that level of
questioning also.
standardization in the U.S.
In the
for
US.
interview processes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a great question, and and I'm not going to lie to you. I saw you ask it, MSEC, and I'm glad you did. I got nervous because I don't fully understand that as much as I should. Thank you for the honest answer, Tegora. And MSEC, again, another reason why I want to talk to you too, because there needs to be more light, perhaps shined on that in the U.S. Because we do have those differences there. Electro.
I had a bunch of like autistic students when I was a career tech instructor, and they did extremely well on all the technical tasks. But you're absolutely right for things like answering to working on a team and things like that. They might not shine as brightly, and so maybe on balance,
It's
like
interesting seeing the difference in
when
regions.
us as a
You're potentially
team, as
missing
a sort
some
of
great
hiring
candidates.
manager team,
Smiley
are
face.
looking at candidates on balance.
Mhm.
Somebody might have a much stronger technical skill than they do interpersonal skill, and depending on what we're hiring for at that point, maybe we need somebody who's a little bit stronger on the technical side. Maybe that'll be a point where they'll win, right?
Yep. Excellent point, MSEC. Thank you, Tegora. Leon had said, okay, yep, that was more on neurodiverse. Electro's new to the community. If I'm trying to enter an entry-level position, what are some things probably I can do to diversify myself from the rest? We talked a little bit. Well, we talked a lot about what you can do to diversify yourself from the rest. But do you have any other suggestions there for Electro, Tegora?
Yeah, based on what we've been seeing in the interview rooms, it's critically important that you are at the entry level, that you're well grounded in the foundations of IT. And there's usually this sort of like hand wavy version of what I mean by the foundational knowledge. But the thing that gets at this best is like sort of CompTIA's A+, Net+, Security+. Like all of the concepts that are in the base 3 are things that will help get you well grounded in the foundations. And the educator in me also likes to say that rote memorization by itself doesn't make knowledge stick. And that's where that home lab situation comes in, because it's one thing to have studied the OSI model like one time and know that it's a thing and that it has 7 layers, but then to like set up your own network and realize how the network stack
Leo
works
says-
by actually like
That's who we have
addressing an API and figuring out, after dealing with problems with the connection between like your computer and the API that you're trying to get to respond to, like figuring out that it's somewhere in that network stack, and where is it, at what layer of the network stack does the problem lie.
I'll tell you why I'm
Obsidian Vaults
laughing.
is good for
Right.
nodes, right?
Because had I gone down the OSI model when I was doing my home lab on stream last year, I would have checked the connection cables to the SSD drives to make sure that they would be detected by the operating system.
Yeah.
I didn't have
Well,
it plugged
there's also critical points for the
King
systems
Electro
angle.
69 says,
and I
Saying
deal
that,
with
what are
this
some
this
good
kind of thing all the
projects for
time with
beginners or
entry
ideas
level
of
employees.
projects?
The base troubleshooting
P6
methodology that
is
CompTIA offers, they
100%
have some
agree.
things
Network
that talk
Plus was how I
about
got
least costly,
started.
least invasive solutions first.
Mhm.
Like in terms of prioritization, always check that the thing is plugged in, it's powered on before you start like busting open the computer and replacing processors. You know, stuff like that. And then there's other components about like using known good working components. So like if you're troubleshooting, don't try to troubleshoot like a bad component by replacing it with another I don't know whether this is good or not component. Like get it to a point where this thing can act as a tool for you. So essentially it can answer a binary yes or no question about whether or not this thing works. You need to know that if you're
Leo
replacing
says,
this bad monitor
Make
with
sure
this
the
other
connector is on
monitor,
the way
that
in.
this other monitor is
Master
good
Blaster
first.
says,
Don't laugh
It's
I'm
quite
laughing at
literally known
myself.
as known good
Super
working.
Yeah.
Known good working. You need a known good working network cable. How do you know that it's known good working? You plug it into a cable tester and you make sure that signal can go through on both ends on all 8 pins.
I literally have a monitor that broke on me that I'm pointing at, and it gets power, and I haven't messed with it because the computer detects it, but I got to find another cable to test. So, like literally, like what you're talking about is just hitting home, and it just makes so
Yeah.
much sense why you need that foundational knowledge. Yep, that's
Yeah.
what I'm laughing at, Master Blaster. I'm laughing at myself.
It reminds me every time that I talk
Leo
about
says,
like the foundations
After
that
installed my new CPU cooler,
that
my computer didn't turn
we
on.
as an industry, as IT and cybersecurity, are just like a lot less transparent about what we mean by that than probably we should be.
Mhm.
There should probably be some place that we can go online and just use to verify that we have foundational knowledge. Like everybody who wants to
There
work in
is
IT can
the
go to
power
this
cable
website
stopped
and just
working.
like start
So I changed
fussing around with a
cables
set of
work perfectly
systems and then
instead
prove
of
that they have
rebuilding the
foundational
PC.
knowledge in some way.
Nice. You know what? Stepping out from our normal outline, I asked Zoogs about Arizona iced tea. Oh, you know what? I never got back to that
Delicious.
question though. It is? Okay. Which flavor are you
It's
getting
the,
if you walk into the convenience store with a wall of Arizona iced teas in the door?
Oh, the Arnold Palmer.
Man, oh man. There's
is
something
the
about
way.
lemonade and iced tea, man. Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah, on a hot day.
Yep. Good one. King Electro's asking in chat, what are some good projects for beginners or ideas of projects? Do you have any that are off the top of your head? Because literally, like anything that you can say that you're putting together or that you're working on, I think you can make a blog post out of it. If it's just you and your journey learning how to do virtualization on your computer for the first time and downloading a VM and going through the process, I think that's a good one. But do you have any other good ones, Tegora?
I'll first reference the most unhelpful answer that I've ever heard directed at this question, which is just do anything. just do.
Yeah.
Like I've heard those responses and they're just like the most unhelpful responses. The sentiment is in the right place.
Yeah.
But I think what people generally don't have like at hand when they're
Magnus
thinking
is.
about responses to questions
Might be
like
about
this
to take you to
is a
court,
set
sir.
of
Just do it.
go-to
Hugh says,
you must do
But
these
they are
sorts
the
of
most
things.
helpful response.
Because I teach a sysadmin course for sysadmin students, I want to know that you can get around command line environment in both Windows and Linux. I want to know that you can make folders, move files, deal with permissions, add users groups, add users to groups, so on and so forth. I want to know that you can spin up an Active Directory domain controller
Kitty
as a
says,
sort of basic skill.
Q,
I want to
if
know
you
that
think
you
of
can make
VTubers who's the cutest
services
one,
work
you can
on
say me it's
Linux
fine, no if you
machines
want
and
hug.
on Windows machines, and get the Linux and Windows
Master
machines
Blaster
talk
says,
to one another
People need to
via
know a
that
list
service
from
layer.
which to choose that everything cackle.
I want to know that you can do all of these things, and it's a big ask, right? But like, I want to know that you can do all these things. I want to know that you can make it so that your Linux box and your Windows box that are connected on the same network, that you can make your Linux box talk to Kerberos. I want to know that you can make Active Directory authentication work on your Linux box, essentially.
So the chat was kind enough to remind me, and I like how you answered that question, because I can't remember who often says that about just doing or just starting. I'm sure it'll come to me after the stream. Yeah, but
the Nike response to IT.
Yes, yeah. But I'll often tell people just get started. Like and it's not from a laziness aspect of me of answering a question. It comes from, because we hear it a lot. Like, well, what do I work on? Well, what do I do? The first project that you work on, that you put on GitHub, isn't going to be spectacular. One of the first code snippets I put on GitHub, I think, was a rock paper scissor game in Java.
Yeah.
Not JavaScript, it was in Java. So that's what I mean by just doing. Just do.
It stems from two places. I think when people are asked to offer advice, they don't often have the advice at hand, right? So like, I'm not thinking about what you need all the time, and so I can't provide good responses to like what you possibly need. The second problem is this mind blindness problem. Like, once you, in any field, it doesn't matter if it's IT or any, like, I've worked across several different fields in my life. I'm 41 years old. I've worked in academia as a historian, as a philosopher, as a scientist. Any field that you go to that has expertise, once you get that expertise, you become mind blind to the things that it took to get you to the point where you have expertise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So like, when somebody's asking questions at this like pre-fundamental level, where they're like, I just need to know how to get going. Like, how do I get started?
Yeah.
And the most genuine answer to this, like, how do I get started at a fundamental level problem, is kind of like the answer that you provided. It's like, I started by programming a game. It was like tic-tac-toe. It was, I didn't know what I was doing, didn't really care, but I needed to produce something. So picking a project that you're interested in is super critically important, and picking a direction. So it has to be something that engages you creatively, and it has to provide directionality to your effort, right? So like, if you're aiming at something, it's fine. We talk about these different areas of cybersecurity, like, infrastructure hacking versus web hacking and whatever. Let's say you're just like, I want to be a web hacker. You can decide that up front. And you could be wrong about the fact that 2 years from now, you're going to be a web hacker. You could, as long as you pick that direction and go with it, you're going to gain skills that are going to help you no matter where you end up. But just pick a direction. And I think this is more helpful than just do something, because it tells you, okay, find out what I'm interested in, pick a direction, get going in that direction, pick projects that are going to engage you creatively, and when you've done that work, if you find out that you were wrong about what you were interested in, you found out something new about yourself.
Yep. Agree. Wholeheartedly, 100%. I wish I could argue with something on that. Excellent advice again.
And the great thing about IT is it all connects. At the end of the day, like, stuff about the web connects to stuff about infrastructure all the time. All this stuff, all these systems, this is why we refer to them as systems, are interconnected. So if you learn how to do something in one area of IT, it's going to help you in some other area of IT. So it's not wasted time to pick a direction and just go that way.
Taking a look at chat real quick. Nori had jumped in. VTubers, who I think is the cutest VTuber. Nori, that goes without question. You're my favorite.
I'm gonna be honest when I say like I must be an old person because I barely understand what VTuber means.
I didn't understand it until they made one for me, Tegora. So
Nice.
Do people need to know list for choose everything? Oh yeah, that's nice. I just started a list.
Let me comment on this MSEC thing. So he says Windows Server evaluation ISOs are free for 180 days. I want to highlight this. I also want to say, if you find yourself with any sort of .edu email address, typically they'll have, what is it? It's Microsoft something for dev tools for teaching and learning.
Something like that. And it's essentially a repo of, right? Good.
Yeah, you can get access to any Microsoft license like without the 180-day limitation.
I don't know what if Tube is either.
Yep, great point. Yeah, if you have an EDU and you haven't done so, I downloaded the hell out of Windows. I think I put it on 3. I had a limit. I think they give us 3. I downloaded it on 3 of the computers.
Spark, and then they made it Azure Dev Tools for teaching.
says.
Yeah, used to be called DreamSpark.
Yeah, and so you can grab like licensed versions of what do they have, like Visual Studio. Like, you can download licensed versions of Microsoft SQL Studio and Microsoft SQL Server Manager.
Yep.
Just like the whole thing.
I got like the skis from my
They got plenty of great stuff on there.
Yep, me too. Let me get back over to the questions here. So we're talking about landing your job in the industry. We talked about okay, so how necessary is networking? I've been in the habit of telling people, look, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, I'm still terrible at it. I was just at a company retreat. There was 300 people there. I walked in and I like clammed up like instantly. I had to go and take a walk around and clear my head and, you know, remind myself I got to engage with people. And I got back to my table and I just started asking people about what they do in the job and you know what do they do with the company and you know talk about that, like is there anything interesting. So it's hard in person, but I definitely think it's important on LinkedIn. I think it's important in even in Discord, and I especially think it's important in person. But the last thing I want to say was that if you're on social media, you got to engage positively. I think the hot takes, if you're trying to get into the industry, could be detrimental to you. But engage positively and genuinely asking questions of people's posts. What are your feelings, Tegora?
Have a LinkedIn. That's important at a sort of basic level to keep track of things. So like, whenever I get a new certification, everybody will see some notification that says I've got a new certification, right? It's not really about me tooting my horn. It's about the fact that I say this jokingly, both now that I'm a manager and when I was a teacher. I say I've got a bad case of CRS from my time in the military, and if you don't know what CRS is, then you're lucky.
You explain it? What's CRS?
It's a degenerative illness related to aging called can't remember shit.
Yeah, I got that.
And so LinkedIn helps with that because you don't have to remember shit that you write down.
That's all right there. So, yeah. All their experience, where they worked, if you worked with them before, if you were in the same job. Yeah.
Yeah, so on the other networking aspects. So when I was younger, and I still struggle with this a little bit, but like when I was a teenager and
Luo.
into my early 20s especially, I just found it really difficult to talk to people. And I find that like when I'm in social situations like a big party and everybody is finding it easy to just go up and talk to random strangers, I'm not that guy. And so
I'm laughing because I'm not either. Yep.
I've really had to work at becoming the guy who talks when at least talks when necessary. Okay. And it's super super prevalent in industry, especially in like the IT field. If you get in, you start working the IT field, if you have something that lies within your scope, you gotta speak about it.
Hmm.
Um, you gotta speak to the things that fall within your area of responsibility. And like, there's so many people that I work with that are at the sort of like leader level that don't speak to things in their area of responsibility because they don't feel well versed in speaking up generally.
Hmm.
I take it. Um, so that's in the work setting. In the sort of like extended work setting, when you find yourself out at parties and things like that, one of the things that I've found to be helpful is to just generate like, I know it sounds cheesy, but like get some dad jokes, get some have a couple of hip pocket jokes that you can just like throw in there. And if people are laughing at something that you said, then you feel less averse to them because
Hmm.
they're not laughing at you, they're laughing at the thing that you said. And then you can, because everybody's laughing and
Cyberchick
cheerful
says,
and joyous, it's
Dad jokes
it's a
work
little bit
well.
easier to like interject yourself into conversation afterwards, after people are feeling good about your presence,
Yeah.
And so it feels weird to enter into a social situation where you're just like interjecting into a social situation. Nobody knows who you are. You're a
Mm.
complete stranger. You've added no value yet to anybody, and they're just like, "Who's this weird guy that's just standing there all awkwardly and sheepish?" Yep. So you got to find a way to break in, establish purpose, establish value. Uh, Jokes are an easy end.
Hmm.
So like, have some jokes. Be the kind of person who likes to joke around. Uh, don't take yourself too seriously where you don't have some jokes and can't laugh at jokes that other people make.
Right.
Um, like all this stuff's important, especially like in-person social situations and networking. And there's a balance act to this too, because you can be so much of a jokester that people never take you
Seriously.
seriously.
Hmm.
So
Yep. Another good
yeah,
point. Another good point.
yeah,
And
you gotta balance that.
agree. And so this takes us into the next question too, because I've included into the list is like importance of stepping out of your comfort zone. For a long time, I would stay in my cozy little bubble. I would often tell myself, I don't want to take a chance because I don't want to fall on my ass, or I don't want to fail. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to do something because I don't want to screw it up. It was only, unfortunately, after 40 years of spinning around on this flaming rock that I realized how important it is to step out of my comfort zone, and how much you learn and how much you grow when you're outside of your comfort zone. So, I'll tell people, hey, just get comfortable being uncomfortable. What do you, what are your feelings about stepping outside of your comfort zone, Tegora?
If you're just getting
Leo
started in a
says,
job
There you go.
that
Found
you
it.
don't know
Here the
very
link
well,
for Microsoft free stuff for
everything will
emails.
feel
Well,
uncomfortable.
link.
King
Everything,
Electro 69
start to
says,
finish, everything's gonna feel
Dad
uncomfortable.
yet can't make dad
They
jokes.
term
Frown
this
frown.
imposter syndrome,
Leo says,
and I think I said it the
Windows
other day
Server,
when I was in
Windows
stream.
10, Visio Profesional,
Just so
MS
you're
Project,
aware,
etc.
even the people who've made it, even the people who've made it, still have imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yep. Everyone's still trying to figure it out. Everyone's still learning.
Yeah.
Everyone's still questioning. My God, what? I'm sorry. They know what's a VTuber? Like everyone's still struggling with being relevant, I think.
So you are an imposter.
Hmm.
We're all imposters here. Everyone's imposter. Accept it. Move on from it. Any working professional, regardless of their field, has to start somewhere, and that somewhere is
Cyberchick says,
lovingly what I like to
I'll be
call the
100
zone of
before we
crap.
figure it out.
Wait, what was
For
that
two
again?
reasons. I call it the zone of crap.
Okay.
Now I'll give you for two reasons. You're
Please.
expected to fight for your place and existence on the team, right?
All right.
And basically, I want somebody on the team who wants to be there and will demonstrate their desire to learn and grow every day when they come to work. And the second reason why I call it the zone of crap is it's important to find yourself at the right place and the right time to get new experiences and to learn new things. To some extent, like L2 and L3 system administrators aren't going to invite you in to their crap.
says,
They're not going to
Zone
say,
of crap
hey, come
needs to be a
along.
t-shirt
I've got some new
design
things
now.
to teach you, young Padawan. That's not the way it works.
No. No.
You have to be available to take advantage of the fact that people are willing to teach you if you make yourself available to learn.
And that's a
You have to
vulnerable
learn
position.
how to you got to learn how to creatively leverage the fact that you need to be put into these positions where some leader, manager of your team has expectations that you're going to be learning and growing on the
Phone
job,
says,
developing from
To that
within the
point, it's
role that
home.
you've been hired
So I've been
into.
doing payroll
There's
software
baked in
implementation
learning,
for 16
on the job
years.
training that
I have a
happens within
specialty in
every
that role that's
industry.
very rare.
And
I really do have imposter
your manager is
syndrome,
going to
even though
love
I've
the fact that
literally done
you're
this
willing to
job.
learn.
I'm getting control
Other
of it, but
people
it happens
around
to
are going to
everyone.
be open to the fact of like teaching you new things if you make it seem like you're capable of learning.
Hmm.
All this stuff. If you're the type of person, and I've seen it on the opposite end of the spectrum, the I know everything kind of person, because you never want to admit that you're wrong and you
Right.
never want to admit that you're flawed in any sort of way. This is a problem for you. If you go into situations and work situations and make it seem like you have a whole bunch of value, but you do not, then you're going to find yourself in a position where other people aren't going to be so open to teach you new things because you already know it all.
Right.
And that's not on them because you opened up with, I already know everything.
Right.
Okay, fine. I don't have to
I've
teach you.
done this role at my old job, little damn it.
It's a vulnerable position to tell people, include me. I don't know what this is. I include me in the next Teams meeting you have on this project. I want to learn. I want to become more familiar. It's vulnerable. That's hard to say that over and over and over again. But eventually people will understand that, okay, this person wants to be involved. This person wants to know, and hopefully that will help with getting you included on things. Faux Machina, dude, that point hits home. So I've been doing payroll software for 16 years. I have a specialty in that role that's very rare. I really do have imposter syndrome, even though I've literally done this job. I'm getting out of control. I'm getting control of it, but it happens to everyone. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true.
It
is true.
We talked about your current role. We talked about like your expectations, I think, within your role. We're getting close to the end, Tegora. I mean, is there any, I'm going to talk about anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically, but, is there any other advice that you think people should have that you wish you had when you started on your path? It's not necessarily cybersecurity, but like on your path with IT or just in general with career?
Be open to the humanity of it. I think the thing that's carried me really, really far in the role that I'm in is like understanding that you're dealing with people at the end of the day. We deal in technology, but the technology affects the people that we work for. Like, I didn't handle this as part of my bio, but I work in aerospace right now. So I work in a siloed classified environment dealing with aerospace technology. They design next generation aircraft, um, aircraft engines, things like that, components of aircraft engines. So when their IT doesn't work, it affects them in their work life, but it affects like their mood for the day. And at the end of the day, like being able to understand that like your work affects their livelihood and what their life is like when they come to work, it's critically important for me and the people who work on my team to realize this fact, because oftentimes it'll always come down to like how their request affects your immediate circumstance, right? And the service desk,
Okay.
people always get bent out of shape about every little thing. They're like, I can't believe they're asking me to solve this problem, whatever. If you just like depersonalize it, it's not about you. Recognize there's humanity in the fact that like you're here to serve a role. You're privileged to work in this role right now. And until you've taken on some other role, you should do this role the best that you
Best you can.
possibly can. You should strive to make this place better than what you found it. Those are the two sort of guiding mantras of whenever I take on a new role. Do the role in the best way that I possibly can, and it's going to be different for everybody because, you know, people have different capabilities, and always leave a place better than you found it.
Hmm.
That like if you go in with that attitude to any job that you work, you're going to be valued for that.
Yep. Agree. God, I wish I had some shit to disagree with you about, Tegora. I don't.
The Browns suck.
Oh, you are full of, yeah, you're baiting me. There's no way. Are you kidding me?
I can't
All of
say
the
that
industries?
way, no.
No, yeah.
The Bengals are out of it, so
That's
You're
tough.
now good.
That really is.
Translated from
Got
Haitian
'em.
Creole.
yeah. But
Cyberchick
if anybody
says,
else has anything
Here
in
we go.
chat,
Sports
I'm
chat.
willing to answer other questions that people have.
Hmm.
Um,
Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically?
no, I'm interested to see
Okay.
if anybody else has questions. If not, then we can get on to doing some hacking or whatever else you guys got going on.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, yep. Chat. Is there any questions there that anyone else has that or anyone else wants to talk about?
Fomachina says,
Good information. Highly motivating. That's why I like coming here. Thank you, Tegora and Theo, for sharing.
Yeah, for what it's worth, like the thing that I want to get across about this is that, you know, people often think
Don't
that they're
listen to me
shunned away
says.
No questions from
taking
YouTube.
on new roles or new positions because of technical skill, but like oftentimes it's not the case. What we're looking for as hiring managers is technically something different
Master
than what you
Blaster
think we're
says,
looking for
I'm
as
next Kappa.
people who apply for the job. So put your best foot forward by making like a resume that's both well considered and has gone
King
through
Electro
many
69
drafts.
says,
You find
Very
somebody
good
that you
info, thank you
trust.
guys.
You trust their opinion and you trust their advice, and you go and say, is this the best version of myself? When you put their resume in front of them. You want to find somebody who's
Insect
both out
says,
of industry and somebody
Yeah, so
who's in
many job
industry to
recs
review
ask
your
for more than they
resume.
actually get you to
And then
do.
when you
Lol.
put it forward, you know, make sure that you've done your diligence. Don't put forward something that you haven't spell checked or anything like that. And as long as you make it through that initial screening, like I'm willing to entertain in the fact that somebody legitimately wants a role if they come in to the interview room and say, "Hey, I'm interested in this role." Now, you have to alleviate my concerns about you. Like you have
don't
to
listen to me
deal with the
says.
fact that I have
You
certain
mean like they want
fears
to fill
as a
3
hiring
roles with
manager
1 hire?
about, you know, people that I bring into my house. Um, I didn't go into the long, elaborate story of like 2 people who did come into my house as a hiring manager that it took forever to get rid of. Like it's so easy to bring somebody on. It's so hard to get rid of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that third fear that I was talking about, the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my oh my God, does it take forever to get rid of somebody?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's incredibly toxic to your team and organization when you
Right.
have to. So.
And you don't go into that as a hiring manager. You don't go into that. You want everyone to work out. You're looking for people that will fit, that will contribute to the team, that will be there long lasting. So you don't go into that like, God, if it doesn't work out, I mean, you want it to work out with the person you're bringing on. So putting your best foot forward and showing people that you want to work with them. I agree with you again, Tegora.
Zupri, I was talking about the 3 fears that hiring managers have, not 3 things that I'm looking for hiring people into. So it's basically like, are you the type of person who can learn on the job? Are you the type of person that will fit well on my team? And this sort of third wild card, which is fear of the unknown. And fear of the unknown is weird because what we're looking for is to like
We do
get a
like
sense for
60%
somebody's
social fit and
personality
40%
and
skill
how they
fit.
interact during a very short 30-minute span of time. All you really have to do for the unknown portion, and there's, like I said, you can't really do much about this as a hiring manager, is just don't red flag yourself. Don't do anything where the employer is going to be like, oh, that's a red flag.
Okay. Okay. I don't see anything else out there from chat. There's a bunch of thank yous in there. I'm sure you'll be able to see them. I'll make this VOD. I'll save this chunk so it'll be available on Twitch. I'm gonna probably take the VOD. I think I could just upload it directly to Spotify or whatever it is they call it now for the podcast. I don't think I'm gonna, because I have video to use. So it'll be on the podcast. It'll be on YouTube and it'll be on Twitch. Tegora, I can't thank you enough. I've reached out to you and asked for questions and help on a couple of different things. In fact, we even talked about like rote memorization and learning at length, and even that's being helpful. So I appreciate that as well. But thank you again for doing the podcast, for all your knowledge. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you guys are looking for me, feel free to
Friday
connect with
Dopenit
me on
says,
LinkedIn. I don't
Hello,
really care
guys.
because I'm an old guy. I like to dox myself.
Don't listen to
I
me
know,
sis.
me too.
Sean
Thank you,
Comer is
Ted
my name.
Zero
Look for me
Ra.
on LinkedIn. You can connect with me.
We can include it in the description or the podcast too. Whatever you're comfortable with. And I was even going to ask you about like the all the answers that you questioned. If you want me to include that, we can do that as well.
Feel free to include whatever. If I put
Okay.
it out there, I'm okay with it.
Okay, sounds good. I've had 2 redeems for Billy the Fish from Nori earlier on and Jess. So I'm going to let those go. Thank you again, Tegora.
Yeah, thank you.
Friday
Okay,
Dopenit says,
that's the marker.
Goodbye.
There's the first Billy the Fish. I'm going to hit it again, and I'm going to take a quick break. I got to check on family stuff, and then I'll be maybe we'll come back and do some hack the box or something.
Kitty says, Jessa, translated from Estonian. Jess says,
Hi, Jess.
Nori Noiki one Angi.
translated
No.
from Italian.
Here's the second one.
Hi Theo.
Raspberry Pi supercomputer says,
I'll be back here in a minute less than 3.